Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today and welcome to our session. I'm Tim Morton, one of the co-founders of Prompt AI, and today we're diving into a critical and often overlooked topic around mergers, acquisitions, integration, and the human side of change. Today's discussion is titled PMI M&A Integration, Winning Hearts, Minds, and Business Value. And of course, for those of you that aren't sure, the PMI acronym stands for post-merger integration. And the stats around M&A failures are brutal, and many surveys are putting it over 90% failure rate, which is higher than other transformations. And we know that most M&A deals don't fail because of strategy or financials. They fail because of people, culture, and processes. And these are areas that leaders often underestimate until it's too late. And I want to start with a quick story. About 10 years ago, an uncle of mine had said to me, I don't know how you can do merger and acquisition type work, how you can do these integrations. And I was really caught off guard. And what was happening was he was reading the news about what was happening with 3G Capital and their merger of Heinz and Kraft. And it was really a slash and burn exercise. So he was reading all of these headlines and said, I can't believe that you'd have anything to do with this. And first thing I said is 3G would never hire us. And a big reason why we work in this area is because we can't change that it's going to happen, but we can make a huge difference, and we can make sure that people are treated with dignity and respect, and that we think about their culture and their people, and we reduce fear and anxiety. And I think he seemed to he seemed to really get it. And of course, anyone who's following the news right now will see that Kraft and Heinz are separating. So everything comes full circle. So I want to acknowledge our guests today, two incredible voices in this space. Trish Gregory, change strategy and executive leader, and quite a powerhouse when it comes to change and transformation. Rob Allen, managing director at Aligned Outcomes, just a thought leader extraordinaire. So with these two thought leaders, they're going to share some practical insights and examples of how to de-risk integration, how to align leaders and culture and process, and use insights to detect resistance before it derails value. And I've been so looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be an incredible discussion with these two amazing thought leaders. And Rob and Trish have been colleagues and collaborators for years. They've worked on everything, so many programs, including M&As, where the stakes were so high, very complex, and traditional methods just wouldn't cut it. And so for those of you joining us today, thank you. And if you have questions, please share them in the chat in Q&A. We're also recording this session, and we'll share it following the discussion. And we're happy to also share a blog summary after this discussion. So well, with that, I'd love to hand it over to Trish and then Rob for an introduction.
Thanks, Tim, so much. Good to be here this morning. I'm very excited, Rob, for us to be having this conversation today. Tim's right. We've been down a lot of roads with respect to M&As. And it's been a fascinating journey. I'm proud to be in the 30-year plus team of change, transformation, and most especially mergers and acquisitions. And I was thrilled to meet Tim and Nicholas and team about 5 years ago, and really am enjoying working with the Prompted team and the Prompted platform. It just helps immensely when we're focusing on the human side of the changes that occur with mergers and acquisitions. Very excited about being here today. Over to you, Rob.
Hey, great. Thanks, Trish. Yep, this is not a full circle moment because we're spinning lots of circles these days together. with aligned outcomes and the leadership from Tim and you and the rest of the Prompta team. Like you, have many years of leadership in a variety of different kinds of corporate situations where growth, upsizing, and downsizing were both at play at the same time. It seemed particularly through the 90s. So you and I've had a lot of experience. I'm with Aligned Outcomes. We've been around since the middle teens, and we help customers do what we call human-centric transformation by leveraging technology. Our concept is to bring our customers subject matter experts, their top employees into the projects and creating enthusiasm for the transformation that's happening. And this is very well aligned with Tim and Trish and the entire team at Prompta. So looking forward to getting started here, Trish.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you both. So let's just jump right into the conversation. So Trish, if you want to bring up the diamond model that we'll be discussing today, and we can just head right in.
Cool. There we go. Thanks, Tim. So just to provide some context for our conversation today, when we focus on any transformation, there are 4 major elements to any transformation: organization structures at the top. That's job roles, accountabilities, work structures, how all of the people are aligned within the organization. On the right side is technology and process. This is ways of working, digital platforms, how information flows, how people work together across silos or within teams. The bottom point is management measurement systems. We're all familiar with those. This is how we actually run the business. There's a single, hopefully most of the time, a single version of the truth. And then we create the events that allow leaders and managers to get together and make good business decisions based on the information that they have. And then finally, on the left side, culture and behavior. This is how our organization hums. This is how leaders demonstrate to their teams the values of the organization and why the organization exists and what the purpose of it is and how they're meant to serve their clients. So when you think about these 4 elements with respect to M&A, it's really important to keep in mind that the majority of the time, organizations, both being purchased and the ones who are buying, are very, very focused on technology and process and management system and metrics and understanding how that'll all work when 2 organizations become one. They're less focused on org structure and culture behavior, and I'll tell you why. The technology process management measurement system focus is really all about the transaction. And so, one group has said, we're going to give you all this value and you just give us the money. Thank you so much. And day one, that's all going to happen. And the organization that's the purchaser is intensely focused on ensuring the business keeps running. There isn't a major dip, that they don't lose critical people. And so there's a big focus on those 2 points. What we like to emphasize, in addition to those 2 points, which are critically important, is the focus on culture and behavior. Each organization comes with its own culture. There are strengths, there are weaknesses, and we help the merged organization to bring up the best of both worlds and then create a new environment where everybody feels solidly landed and able to do their job and knows if they need help, it's just a phone call away. And org structure has to do with this human element of a merger or an acquisition, and that is, where did I land? And I could be anyone in the organization, from the most senior people to the most junior, including interns, and they're all wondering, where do I land on day one? And so we put a lot of focus here so that the emphasis is on the human side. Additionally, with technology, process management, and metrics, we focus on what's happening to the people in those organizations. I hope that helps for some context.
Yeah, thanks so much, Trish. Rob, anything you want to add before we jump into the first question?
Yeah, no, as Trish and I have experienced in the projects that we've worked on together, The value proposition that we bring together with Prompta is supporting the Prompta focus on culture, behavior, and organizational structure. We ask the question at Aligned Outcomes, the technology, the workflow, the processes continue to be very important. But what if you could influence the culture and behavior and the creation of the org structure by involving our clients' employees in the enhancement of workflow and processes and the realignment of technology during an M&A experience? And that's where together Aligned Outcomes with Prompta has had tremendous success with delighting customers on all kinds of different projects in addition to M&A.
Thanks, Rob. And so Trish, I got a question for you. If we think about, you've got those two areas highlighted. Just thinking about culture and leadership, what do you feel, and from your experience, what are those early signs of whether this initial integration is on track or whether it's at risk?
Oh, that's a good question. So a couple of things right off the bat. If once the announcement's public and both organizations know that there's going to be an integration, for example, or a merger, we look for a couple of things. And one of the ways we do, I'll get into how we do that in a second, but one of the most telling signs when we get into a client organization to help them, and in this case, I would say we're in with the organization being purchased as opposed to the acquiring one. We look at the senior leadership team and we watch for people who are disconnecting early. The risk of that is twofold. First of all, they're making an assumption that that new organization doesn't have a place for them, which many times is untrue. In fact, often is untrue, because the organization acquiring is typically trying to expand and grow in the marketplace. And so if they've got some key leaders in the company they're buying who think there's no place for them, and they actually exit early, what we then have is this whole group of people within the organization who now don't have a leader. And they wonder, why did that person exit? What does it mean for me? So what we try to do very early in our engagement with our clients is to ensure that we communicate effectively with them that nobody should be making assumptions until we have all the information. And 9 times out of 10, you the same box you're used to being in the organization you've lived, you may actually land in a better role, for example. So that's one of the big things we look for very early on. And then the other thing we can notice are things like sick days, people calling in sick more often, productivity dips, etc. And so what we do when we start to work with a company that's being acquired or is purchasing is we get a sentiment analysis of both organizations as quickly as possible. Because the sooner you know what's scaring people, keeping them up at night, or making them happy and excited about this change, the better you can focus on looking for pockets of resistance and people who may be deciding they don't see a place for themselves, and communicating with them so that the retention issues start to minimize prior to day one. And then people feel more confident that even if on day one they don't know everything about how it's going to go and how it's going to be working in this new organization, they have a level of confidence that they're going to stay and wait and see. So that's one of the big things that we see often.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's it's such an important point, that asking for people's sentiment, what they're fearful of, what's causing them anxiety, and then giving, being able to give those key themes back to leaders to start to address them right away. Yeah. That, hey, you're asking, but somebody's hearing me, and something's happening, and that that goes so far. And Rob, for you on the workflow side, how do you quickly uncover the real way work gets done without slowing down the deal?
Well, that's a great question, Tim. And as as Trish has seen on a number of projects that we've worked on together, Aligned Outcomes approach, technology, method is all based on something in organizational science called phenomenology. Phenomenology is uncovering how things actually work. Often in post-integration work, you're running off of standard operating procedure documents. You are working with consultants who are bringing in industry best practices from the outside. You're working on management level perceptions of the way that work might occur. And what we do at Aligned Outcomes is we once we have the integration project defined, we work with the customer to mindfully assess who are the employees that are really the experts at the area of the business that's being integrated. And we work with those people using a methodology we call team-enabled transformation, where we work with the subject matter experts in a rapid and precise way to gather up all the information about the way the workflows actually happen, the skill sets that are used to drive the workflows, and the way that technology is aligned to the workflow. And what happens is you're able to rapidly design the future workflows, better align the technologies to the new model. But the most important thing, and this is what we found to be really aligned with Prompta's work, is that the employees that are brought in to assist with the design of the workflows going forward, they become what we call enthusiastic target adopters. They feel like they've been heard, their expertise has been utilized, they've had an opportunity to express how they think it could work better in the integrated model. And they go back to the rest of the organization and say, hey, listen, you know, this project's going really well. We've been heard. There's going to be some really cool things happening going forward. And this starts to contribute positively to the new culture, the new organization structure going forward. And this is what Trish and I have discovered in working together, both from the culture, behavior, org side, as well as the process management, governance, technology side. Right, Trish?
Absolutely. And the coolest thing about that, Rob, the very first time we did it, often as a change leader, the thing you want more than anything are people within an organization to self-select and put their hand up and say, I already see the value, I see that it's positive, and I'm okay to go tell my peers the same. The risk you run with that is you only have the optimists in the room. What happens when you do the modeling the way you guys do it is you don't just grab everybody with the most positive outlook, right? You grab the people with the most understanding. And 9 times out of 10, it gives you a beautiful mix. You get that person who's always the critical thinker and constantly asking challenging questions, right? And those are the people we need when we're trying to help folks get their minds around a change, a merger, an acquisition, and be comfortable with it. And so the thing I love about that is we get that whole mix of people as those enthusiastic adopters. And then they do go out into the organization and create a positive hum. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Trish, this one's for you. And you've described culture and sentiment assessment in the past as M&A insurance. So how does how does that work from a pre-deal assessment of change outcomes compared to post-deal?
Yeah. It's kind of cool, Tim, because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we're fortunate enough to be brought in to an M&A transaction before the deal is signed. And when that happens, we have this opportunity. We typically are helping the acquiring, the purchasing company to assess beneath the covers, what am I actually getting? I know what they're telling me I'm getting, and I see the book of business, et cetera. But the thing that's going to keep that business whole and growing after I buy it are the people that are coming with this deal that I'm making. And so what we can do is do sentiment analysis of that organization. And we do it before there's a public announcement. And it's a little, we have to be cautious about how we communicate why we're asking questions, but it's easy to overcome any of that. And so we find out what it is about that organization that employees love. Why are they grateful and happy and excited to work there? What are the things they don't really like so much? How do they feel about their leadership team? How do they feel about the culture, et cetera? And then when we have those insights, we go to the purchasing organization and we can say, you're getting a team that has these strengths, and you're getting a team that wishes these things were true and they're not. And so as the purchaser, I can now say, wow, because oftentimes many of the strengths that come with that organization are ones that I may lack in mine. And so I want to make sure I retain those things. So when I do buy the company, I want to keep the strengths of that culture. And I want to ensure that I do that in a way where I'm overtly telling those employees, although you're going to come and work under a different brand and be called something else, we're not going to let go of the things that make you a brilliant organization. We want to then, broadly use those things across our bigger organization. So it's like an insurance policy, because if I'm buying, I'm trusting that the employees are happy before this merger even happens. I'm trusting that. What
Yeah.
we do is give you more assurance that if there are pockets where there are problems, you can start addressing them on day one as soon as the announcement happens. And then if there are things that are strong and great about that organization, you can tell them those things about that organization and you're happy to have them join your team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's right. And
please go, Rob.
no, sorry, Tim. Yeah, Trish, as you and I have seen in a variety of different projects, what's really exciting about taking a human-centric approach is that it helps in all kinds of integration projects. As we've seen, there's kind of two extremes in integration. A company may be acquiring another company with the intention to fully integrate it and wire it inside their business, so that in the future, you can't really tell what was the old company and what was the new company. In some cases where companies are doing an acquisition where they're moving into a new market, a new geography, or bringing on a new product line, it may make more sense for the acquired organization to remain at a bit of an arm's length, and therefore you want to work with the experts from both sides to create the right process pipe connectors between the two organizations. And what we've seen in the work that we've done, particularly if you can start as you've described, start as early as possible. What we're describing works on both ends of this spectrum, as well as the various versions that happen in between, correct?
Yeah, that's very true. And it's interesting because in either case, the more the better this deal is going to go.
Always.
The less, right? It's that stuff. It's like the iceberg. So I tell you about what's brilliant about my organization and all the realities underneath the waterline. And so knowing that you can see beneath the water and understand what some of those risks are gives you a massive advantage, because you can mitigate the risk before they even become an issue. Yeah, it's very true.
And it's so important. I see so often, and I'm sure you do as well, so many of these announcements that are made that say, hey, our cultures are so similar, and what are you basing that on? And in so many ways they're not, because if you think about culture, that's the mindsets, behaviors, the attitudes, it's how work gets done, and it's that whole history that an organization has gone through. And to just say, because, well, we've looked at the values that are that are on each other's websites, and we both have honesty as a value. Well, that shows up very, very different ways, and of course can mean so many different. So to be actually able to get a clear read of what is going on in that culture is just so incredibly important.
Yeah. Completely agree.
So I just want to jump into the next one, and this question's to both of you. So whoever wants to go first. So when you think about combining the sentiment analysis with workflow mapping, how does that create a more holistic people first integration? So whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I don't know, Trish, if I could maybe, take the lead coming in from the workflow side. The challenge with workflow, and particularly aligning technology to workflow these days, is it can, using traditional methods, it can be complex and it can take a long time. And often these integration projects, the board of directors, the executives, particularly on the acquiring company, are really keen to move as quickly as possible. So it's often the shortcuts that might be taken to get the project to go quickly takes the focus off the workflow and the technology alignment and puts it on creating the org chart. And then in doing that, not only moves past the workflow, the important workflow work that has to happen, but also doesn't account for culture. And the trick with what the Prompta team does on sentiment analysis and the organizational change care that they bring to the table, and the speed of execution that Aligned Outcomes brings to the table in terms of being able to gather up what's really happening in the workflow and being able to rapidly make the right technology alignment decisions, is that you can get all four elements of the diamond at speed.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, Trish?
Yeah, and so it brings to mind a story, not a story so much, but just, I mean, we've been through this so many times where the executive team thinks the answer is to create the org chart and publish the org chart and then just say to the business, over to you to figure out how to actually run it. And that's difficult enough if you're within a company that has a specific culture and you're merging two parts of that company into one, for example. It's still confusing as can be, and the business productivity gets really negatively impacted. But when you're talking about an acquisition or a merger of two different companies together, you're not going to stand a chance. So the thing I love about what I've learned over the last 20 plus years in this space is the very last thing you should do is draw the org chart. It's the last thing you should do.
Exactly.
Because it has to be based on optimizing whatever this new entity is that you're creating, however it's being created. And so the processes and how work flows, those by definition create job roles. And
that's exactly right.
Right. And then so you go to the other side of the diamond, you say, okay, so now that we have these new ways of working, what are the behaviors we need from this combined team of people so that that's going to operate effectively?
Yeah.
So that's where we focus more on culture, right? We say, okay, if you weren't as client focused as you used to be, your new process flows require you to have multiple moments of truth with your client that you didn't have before, because your digital platform gives you all kinds of opportunity to do that. So now we got to make sure these folks have the mindset that the customer is actually so important. And every time I have a moment of truth, here's why it matters and what I need to do about it. So, I love when we start with the process and the technology, because that's where the whole thing, it sort of organically grows. And then you understand what the culture needs to look like. And it's so easy to draw the org chart.
That's right. You're bang on. The org chart should emerge by answering the questions of, what is the work needed to move the processes along by leveraging the technology? What are the right skills for the right places along the workflow? And who then are the most experienced and the best individuals to put into the org chart?
Yeah.
You and I both had, saw that experience a few years ago on a major financial institution where they were merging an American organization along with the Canadian organization, and the company they brought in to help them had started by implementing an organizational model that they had implemented for another financial institution. So they were bringing in an industry best practice org chart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they, they put the organization together. They put all the names in the boxes. They had all these people come together to decide how they were going to do the work to launch the integration. And the acquisition failed, and it was when, we were brought in, as you recall, to kind of like restart. And what we discovered was the org chart and the reporting structures and the handoffs between the people were actually quite well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the processes and the workflow underneath, and especially the technologies that were supporting the people and the workflows, technology nowadays is the bridge between the workflow and the humans, right? And
For sure.
it was down there where so the people on the org chart were asking for information about how as part of the governance, how's work happening and what's going on in this department. And the data that was coming back was incorrect. And so
Mm-hmm.
being able to rapidly go in, with prompted doing the sentiment analysis to get a reset on the perspectives of the experts and aligned outcomes rapidly in weeks, not months, assessing the workflows, realigning the technologies, and then, with Promptus help, thoughtfully realigning the org chart to the new workflow. That made all the difference. And by the way, I think the design that we came up with, they'd worked for a year on that acquisition before it failed, and we came in and it was just a matter of 12 weeks. Like it was literally over a summer that we reset and relaunched the integration in September to great success.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it's amazing the number of times I just see this whole thing, people in boxes. Let's get people in boxes, and then we'll figure it all out. And of course, as you shared, that's such a flawed approach. So yeah. So Rob, I want to ask you. You did bring up before the enthusiastic target adopters, and I love that term, and really leveraging those those enthusiastic target adopters. How does that ripple into the wider organization? It sounds like you're creating a bit of a movement.
Yeah, that's I haven't used that term before, Tim, and as usual, you came up with the new vision for. If you don't mind, I'm gonna steal that one.
All yours.
Yeah, it is a movement. You have to be careful when you start this kind of work where you're working with employee perspectives on workflows and capturing it quickly, because like I said, time, speed matters. And so it's you've got to create a situation. And what we do with our customers is we create what we call mindful communications. And what we do is we start with an overarching communication, and this is where we get a lot of advice and coaching from Trish and her team on how to get the communication out about the work that's going to happen on the workflow. So we kind of start out wide in terms of communicating. This is how we're going to approach the design. And then we come down and we work with the customer to identify what we call the subject matter experts. And a subject matter expert, as we say, is a subject matter expert because they're a subject matter expert. And that's a subset of the employees who have been there for a while and know, as I say, phenomenologically know exactly how the work happens, not how the standard operating procedure says it does, not how the manager thinks it does. We get that, and we run rapid validation cycles and start to again communicate to the broader audience. So we've got communications coming down, thoughtful, mindful communications coming down, keeping everybody in the organization in the loop. And then we embed within the organization this sub-team of subject matter experts that are coming back and saying things like, they're listening to us. I've seen some of our ideas hit the screen. They're going to be in the target state design. It's going to be in the end product. This is going to be really cool. And as Trish and I have seen, that just gets this movement, as you say, Tim. I love that word. It gets this movement going, and if you can come through an acquisition with a high percentage of the teams fired up about where the direction is going, and they feel like they've had a part in this, this goes a long way. The CFO will ultimately see the benefit that they'd hoped to get from the acquisition in the first place.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And I'm all for the movement, and we do want to get people involved and engaged in part of the process. It's that whole not for us, without us.
Right.
And so Trish,
Yeah.
just on the other side with the the AI driven sentiment insights, how can you leverage that for leaders to spot and address that resistance early?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I was just thinking when I was listening, Rob, to what you were saying about, creating the movement. I like that. I wrote that down. That if you're a leader and you're responsible for a team in an existing organization that's being integrated into another organization, the best advice I can give is, in spite of what you think is going to happen to you, because that is the hardest part. I mean, if you're a C-suite or a senior leader, a vice president, et cetera, you're going to wonder what's going to happen to you. But what you should, I believe the best thing you can do for yourself and your team is focus on what's happening to them and understand how they feel. Because in spite of how you may feel, you need to stay at least a day ahead of them. You've got more information and access to it, so that can settle you a lot of the time because you're privy to a lot of information that they're not. And so understanding how they feel, what's keeping them up at night, and if they're scared, which a lot of people are when these things are announced, and it's quite natural as a human being to worry about what's going to happen to you. The more you can share with them at a very consistent pace,
Right.
and the more you can address the things that matter to them. So you may think what matters to them is they're worried about, how they're going to serve their clients because they may not understand what the new process is, or there's a new platform they have to use and they're worried about that. It could be that's not at all what they're worried about. And we can help you see what the things that they actually care about. You can
Yeah.
talk about those things first, and then you settle them down. They can hear you, and then you can talk about how you need them to take the education to learn the new platform so that they can manage their client
Yes.
engagements effectively, right?
Yes.
And so the best coaching I can give to a senior leader is, in spite of your own fear, if you can set it aside, uh, based on the fact that you have more information than your folks anyway, and just help them understand that it's not as bad as they think, and you can address their very specific concerns. I think that's a really smart way to go.
Yeah.
It helps with retention, but also helps them as humans to not
Yeah.
panic.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, when we're leaders, that's our job, right? Is to take care
That's
of our
right.
people.
That's right. And you and I have talked about this in the last year or so, and I don't have any scientific research behind this yet, but I have my gut tells me that um, you know the approach that Prompta and Aligned Outcomes take together, this human-centric approach, I think is really well aligned to the new generation of emerging leaders in industry, in the economy. you know if you think about the major generational blocks, the baby boomers, it was all about, like, getting in and having a career. And then the Gen Xers, they say, were like, well, if the company doesn't fit my needs, I'm going to move on. Studies are starting to show that millennials and Gen Zs, if you can give them an opportunity to feel like they're contributing to the future of the business,
Yeah.
their loyalty is actually really high, and their engagement is phenomenal. And what we're seeing with our customers, and I'm thinking about that big one that we're working on out west, Trish, where a high percentage of the emerging leaders are in their late 30s, early 40s, and so they're right in the millennial Gen Z zone. And the effect that's happening in that project is, you give these people an opportunity to contribute, and they'll step up. And they really do contribute, to Tim's phrase, they really contribute to building the movement. And I'm quite bullish on what we've done in the last few years as it's starting to take hold within this new generation of leaders that are emerging.
Totally agree. Yeah. And it's very cool because it's organic, right?
Totally.
It's not
Yeah.
it's not something you can, it's not a slogan, and it's not, back in the 90s, gosh, the way we used to do things back then. It's none of that. It's organic creation of that movement. It's people feeling heard and valued,
Right.
and then being given permission to go out into the organization and talk about how it's going to be, right? And that it aligns with what they value most.
Yeah.
And that what they value most came out in the sentiment analysis, and it was spoken back to them. And so they are now organically shifting the culture, and
Yeah.
they'll be so excited to stay and lead and keep growing it. It's very exciting. I love it. And I think the thing we see all the time now is the senior leaders, folks in the boardroom, really wanting to make that connection in a different way, right? Because generationally, they're typically older than the folks that they need to rely on to actually execute flawlessly on day one after the merger or the acquisition is done. And so what I love about it is this openness to want to talk about those things, because those weren't typical boardroom conversations even a decade ago.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Very cool.
Well, I love some of the examples that have been shared so far. And Rob, you had shared an example about where, ignoring workflow had led to failure, and some ideas of turning it around. But I'd love to hear from both of you. Rob, if there's another example around that workflow, and also Trish, on your side, the human side, thinking about where that had been underestimated and some of the lessons learned to turn it around. So for both of you, we just want to hear your stories. We want to hear about, what's working and what's made a huge difference. So whoever wants to start.
I don't know. Go ahead, Trish. You want to take it from
Okay.
here?
Thanks, I will. So one that comes to mind was the merger of two utilities companies into one. And we were very fortunate to be able to engage prior to the merger. And so did the sentiment analysis in both organizations and discovered that in the organization that was being acquired, there was such a positive culture, right? People felt heard, and that they were in a safe environment, and they could go to anyone in the organization and share with them their thoughts, ideas, how to make things better, and that their management team is sort of open door policy and very very welcoming of that sort of input. That they leveraged innovation in the organization, and people love that, especially the younger folks. They were like, we could be leveraging AI, we could be leveraging so much else. And in that organization, that was a strength in their culture, that they embraced those things. Even though sometimes they got messy, they still figured it out. And they loved how their leadership team communicated with them. So those were sort of three big strengths in this organization that this other utility was purchasing. They were the bigger one. These were the smaller one. And then in the bigger one, when we did this same assessment, the positives in this smaller organization were actually negatives in the one they were going to, right? Hierarchical, sort of military folk, right, in terms of culture. And there was a hierarchy, and you didn't ask somebody a level above your manager to listen to a great idea, for example. This organization did not leverage technology at all. They had very old systems and tools and lots of spreadsheets and things in people's desks or on their laptops. And that the leadership team was not, they were very command and control. So indirect communication, or top down, and not a lot of two-way. And so what we were able to say to the leadership team of this bigger organization is, you're not just getting this other book of business and a broader share of the marketplace. You actually are getting the things that can heal your culture. And it was such an aha moment. And I loved it, because because the leaders here were saying, that's awesome, because we, a few of us have wanted to do some of these things and didn't know how. And so we're saying, well, just keep these leaders with you when you merge, give them a responsibility to bring that to your culture and create this new, bigger organization. So it was it was almost surreal, to be honest, because the point for point was quite unusual. But it was a great example of how, if you have the chance before the merger to figure out what the strengths are in each of the organizations, you could build a really amazing new team.
Yeah. Tim, to add to that, if I could take an example in another reinforcing direction, is that executives should think about the fact that even when they're leveraging the human-centric approaches that we're talking about, the advantage of being able to do the kind of work that Trish and I do from our different points of view on the diamond, because we can do this work so quickly. Oftentimes, after you do an acquisition or or a merger integration, even when it goes well, a quarter later, 4 months, 6 months later, the executive team is saying, okay, now that we've kind of put on this new suit and we're kind of feeling how it fits, and there's a few things we'd like to do to make some tweaks. The work that we do is really reinforcing downstream post PMI. And I'm thinking about this example where we were working with a small and medium business size mortgage renewal company, and they had merged together, and they did the merger, and it went reasonably well. But after the merger, a quarter later, they found out that they discovered that their response time, their turnaround on customer journey, their customer journey had actually got longer.
Mm.
And this was a case where the employees really felt positive about the integration. The engine seemed to be working well, but the customer feedback started to decline, because they went from being able to turn around a mortgage renewal in 7 days, and now it was taking 21 days. And what happened was, a vendor came in and said, well, you should rip out your client journey and put in this brand new $10 million CRM system. And that's one where we got pulled back in, and the recommendation was, after doing some sentiment analysis, we then kind of went in and and looked at this was one that we didn't work on previously. We were kind of brought in afterwards, but we took a fresh look at the workflow. And what we got from the sentiment analysis was that the employees were saying, look, the client journey is dragging out. It's not because we need a new system. It's because we've got to, now that we've worked together, we want to be able to figure out how to start to speed things up together. And this was a really rapid turnaround. It was like a 4-week project where we went in and we modeled the current state of the post-acquisition client journey, worked with the employees to highlight where the opportunities were to speed it up. And in 4 weeks, we had the target state designed, reset, reevaluated the sentiment. The employee sentiment had gone up, and 60 days later, the customer journey turnaround had come back down to 6 days. And that was an example of what often happens is, even if you get the PMI right, months later, you're going to want to keep the improvement mojo going, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And how often have we heard, a new system, that's the cure for all. And we know it's a tool, it's an enabler. You've got to get the ways of working and the processes right. And it just it calls to one of my memories. We had we had two companies merging. The first week they decided, hey, we're going to do this big rah. We're one company, we're one and done. Party. It's all done. Now we're working together. And people were wondering, what do I do? And then they started to see things stall, of course, because they hadn't done the work. They hadn't figured out how they were actually going to work together. So for both of you, beyond hitting those financial targets that that are so important, how do you define and measure that integration success?
Well, I think if you often the post-merger integration, the post-acquisition integration is typically measured through the lens of the chief financial officer. Did the revenue grow? Did the cost model come down? Did we cost efficiently add new markets, new geographies, new product lines to our business? Often the post-merger disaster stories that you hear are coming from the lens of the CFO. I think that, and this is something that I've learned from working with Trish all these years, is that my proposal back to our customers is have the courage to bring employee satisfaction into your post-merger results profile.
Yeah.
And because ultimately, happy employees means happy customers on the outside. And so I'm not adding a lot there, Tim, to your question, but I think that back to our point about this generational shift that's happening in businesses, I think executives that have the courage to not just look at the books, but actually look at the employee impact and measure it, is a really radical way going forward to assessing the positive impact of your acquisition.
I totally agree, 100%. Because the thing that makes a business run are the moments of truth with your clients, right?
Exactly.
And so if the people who are interacting with those clients who you need to keep and expand, if the people interacting with them feel valued and happy and like where they work and have a sense of contributing to the success of the organization, those clients will stay.
Yep.
It's that simple. I remember when TD and Canada Trust merged, and I was a Canada Trust employee for years and years, and they merged, and I thought, oh, I don't know about this, because I purposely stayed with Canada Trust because of their culture and the way their people were. And after the merger happened, nothing changed. They kept a lot of the Canada Trust culture, a lot of the processes, dialogues with the clients, the way they worked, and I wasn't phased at all. And that's when I had the aha. It was a long time ago, but that's when I had the aha that if your people can remain consistent with their clients, regardless of the acquisition and who merged with who, then the clients are gonna stay with you.
Yeah.
And if you can then bring additional strengths because of the joint strengths of the two organizations coming together, that's even better. You'll just satisfy clients even more so and grow your business. So yeah, I totally agree, Rob.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, so a bit of a rapid fire. We've just got a few minutes left, and I got two questions for both of you. So the first one, if you could give leaders one piece of advice to de-risk their next integration, what would it be? So let's hear from Trish first, and then Rob, and it's really that one piece of advice.
It's very simple. Do not underestimate the power of engaging with your people from the very first day. Getting ready for day one. Do not underestimate the power of that. Give your managers everything they need. Keep the managers a day ahead of the employees, but do not underestimate how important it is to have open dialogue with your teams throughout the entire process.
Thanks, Trish. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, and I would take that and down a level and say there are ways in the marketplace, whether it's with Aligned Outcomes or anybody else that might be in this space, there are absolutely ways today, leveraging technology, to engage your experts in helping with the workflow critical success factor in these projects. And if you are working with a integration consultant who is telling you, don't worry about that, we'll get to the workflows later. As a leader, you should have the courage to put your hand up and say, no, let's take a look at how we can engage our people in rapid design of a better target state for workflow and technology alignment. It's out there. Have the courage to make that move.
Yeah.
Thank
Agree.
thank you both for that. And that's what we need during this. It's really, leaders are going through this as their people are, but we need these leaders to be courageous, be really courageous leaders, and make sure that those questions are being asked and are being addressed. So I got one last one, and Rob, you talked about technology. So I'm gonna ask you to answer this one first. So, what do you see the role of AI playing in the future of M&A and organizational transformation?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, why don't we extend the conversation for an hour, Tim? No, but I'll just summarize quickly. What we're seeing in the marketplace right now is quite exciting. Is AI in two or three spots. One is in our business we are gathering up use cases that will allow us to rapidly help our customers improve their target states going forward based on work that's been done in the past, and you can gather that by using AI research. Secondly, there are opportunities to speed up workflow and technologies by bridging process steps with AI applications and agents, and that's going to become more important in the future as well. Those are just two ideas that we're starting to see emerge in the projects that we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
And Trish?
So I guess, one of the reasons I joined forces with you, Tim, is the prompt AI platform, and regardless of whether you use that or something else. But the beautiful thing about it is AI can help you dig through the masses of information and data that you get and really pull out the critical areas that you need to focus on to manage the human side of the change. And to me, the faster you know those things, the faster you can settle your folks down and make them feel, like somebody cares about them, and that every single one of them knows that somebody wants them to land well. I think that's what it is. In any change, if your people believe that you want them to land well, they will trust you enough to wait and see, and they will give you the opportunity to even have some missteps, but to still stick with you until they see, that they're going to be okay. So I would say certainly, prompt AI has given us that opportunity, and it's been incredible and really warms my heart, actually, because it helps people. And I think that's what we want to do, is help people.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
no, exactly.
Well, for anybody who's been listening in to the live recording or watching the recording afterwards, that's what you've both done. Tremendous, incredible insights to help people along their journey. Thank you both so much. And I know people can reach out to both of you on LinkedIn to stay in touch.
Anytime.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for this incredible discussion, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Tim.
Bye for now.
Thanks, Trish. Yep. Good to see you guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye.